listening.
When the world sleeps, the whispers begin. This is North Harbor Corporate Tower, 12 occupied floors above ground, 2 sublevels below. Built in 1998. Renovations stalled in 2002. It smells like old paint, recycled air, and the kind of electricity that has nowhere to go. At night, the building has a rhythm. Fluorescents buzz like insects. Mechanical rooms breathe. And the elevators sing to themselves in metal. My name is Marcus Hale, night security. 8 months on the job before the tapes went bad. You will hear me on these recordings. Sometimes I sound calm, sometimes I don't. They asked for a clean account. This is the cleanest I can make it. The elevators are twins, cab A and cab B, mirrored stainless steel boxes with smoked glass and rubber handrails that feel like old tires. Every hour I do a walk. Lobby, service corridor, loading dock, stairwells, mechanical. You measure a building by the sounds it makes while it thinks you're not listening. I first noticed it on a Tuesday. Camera feed 07A showed cab A drifting to a stop. The panel flickered a number I had never seen in this building. 5. I froze the frame, rewound, played again. The elevator skipped from 4 to 6. And yet, for one frame only, the indicator stuttered 5 in a red that didn't match the building's LED set. I wrote it in the log because that's what you do when you see a thing you don't trust yourself to remember later. 2213. Cab A indicator flicker. 5 displayed briefly. No stop registered. I told myself it was a video dropout. Then it happened again on Wednesday. Different time. Different cab. Same 5. I stood at the lobby console with the radios silent on my shoulder, watching cab B drift down. The doors opened on the lobby. Nobody inside. But the hall camera caught something else. A reflection in the stainless panel. Like a hallway that didn't belong to us. The light wasn't right. It had that early renovation warmth. Tungsten bleeding into beige paint. Like the building was remembering a color it doesn't have anymore. By Thursday, I asked maintenance about the panels. They sent me a PDF. North Harbor has no 5th floor. Never did. Index jumps from 4 to 6. Corporate superstition, I'm told. Different superstition, different number. They took 5 out of the math. And yet I've seen it. In the glass. On the tape. For a heartbeat, that feels like a door. The plans live in sublevel B, a room that smells like wet cardboard and warm dust. A metal shelf sinks under the weight of binders no one wanted to throw away. The label gun handwriting is careful, older than mine. I hauled Arch Elev to the desk, stripped the twine, cracked the rings. Early 2000s vellum sheets rasped like snakeskin. Cab diagrams, winch specs, cable tolerances rated to a math that wanted to be forever. I found the stack for car A and B indicators. Lens gels, standard red. Segments, 0 to 12, -5. Someone had crossed out a line item with an ink that had run underwater. I traced the ink with a finger. The vellum was rippled, like the sheet had been lifted while still crying. I pulled building floor plan, master. There is no numbered square between 4 and 6. Just a gray band labeled service void, /risers, /plenum. No carpet, no tenancy, no lights, no doors, except a penciled note in the margin, fainter than the rest. Do not stop. I copied it to the log. I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted someone else to have written it where I could put it back. On my way up, I passed the service corridor outside the elevator machine room. Someone had stuck a piece of masking tape, ancient, curled at the edges, across the emergency stop key panel. In marker, no floor 5. I stood there too long, I think. Long enough for the motion sensor lights to forget me and shut off. That night, the indicators behaved. Nothing flickered, nothing stuttered. I slept sitting upright in the chair, a pen uncapped in my hand. At 3:17, I woke to the sound of a chain dragging over an empty floor. There is no chain in these elevators. I decided to ride it. You will say that was stupid, and you'll be right. But some problems only tell the truth when you go where they live. I used the service badge. Cab A answered with a polite chime that felt like it died a year ago. Doors opened. I stepped into my reflection and didn't recognize it. I selected 4, then 6. The panel glowed the way a wound glows under gauze. We rose. We slowed. We passed 4. On the way to 6, something leaned against the cables. The car did a small, shameful lurch, the way a body stumbles to cover the fact that it meant to fall. Everything stopped. Between floors. No floor number lit. But on the panel, a shy, reluctant 5 came up, like a bruise through skin. I tried the door open. It answered with a sound like a locked jaw. I thumbed the radio. It whispered back to me with static that had somebody else's breath in it. I pressed emergency stop. Nothing. Keyed the panel. Turned to the inspection plate above the door, the one you only use when you've run out of charms. The screws weren't paint stuck like they should be. Someone had been here. I slid the panel up, letting the heavy line of elevator air cut across my face. The crack above the doors gaped. I could see darkness where a floor did not belong. But it wasn't an empty shaft. It was space. Something was pressed right up against our world with an interest that felt old. I'm not proud of what I did next. I wedged the door tool into the seam and forced the doors apart. Metal argued, then gave. The doors shivered to a halt 6 inches open. I saw a wall, an old one, off-white, scuffed where carts had once bit it. A 5 stenciled in flaking black, lower than the eye usually finds numbers. I widened the gap. A breath of air slid in that didn't belong to the building. Dust motes entered and did not know where to land. Beyond the gap, a hallway, maybe 10 meters long. Linoleum tired of being mopped. A light at the far end trying to warm the color of nothing. I levered the doors wider until I could step out. I shouldn't have, but I did. My boot made a sound on that floor I haven't heard anywhere else. Like stepping on a photograph. It held me, reluctantly. Behind me, Cab A waited with the patience of a dog at a gate it knows you'll come back through. I told myself I'd take 5 steps forward and 5 steps back. It's the kind of deal you make with the dark when you want to feel like you kept your end of something. I took 3 steps, and the light at the end of the corridor went a little bit taller, like it stood up to see me better. I kept my hand on the door frame, as if it could still claim me. The corridor carried sound like a church that had forgotten the prayers, but still remembered how to echo them. There were signs on the walls, faded evacuation routes that led nowhere I recognized. A laminated card with JANITOR typed in a font that stopped being fashionable before I learned to read. A bulletin tack hole constellation with nothing left to hold. The 5 on the wall had dripped once when the paint was new and never finished falling. That tear stopped at my height. I didn't like that. The air smelled like floor wax and something that had lived too long in a crate. I listened for the building, its talking pipes, its workday insomnia, but got a different machinery instead. Something that didn't run on electricity. Something that ran on waiting. At the far end, the light fixture flickered with a pattern that made my back straighten. Not random. An interval. Too long. One short. Long. Like the elevator's chime language, translated into light, I told myself to back up. 5 steps to the doors. But the corridor had the geometry of a photograph, and walking back felt like stepping out of a frame that had other ideas. I turned to look at the elevator gap. It was smaller. The car was still there. I could see stainless and dull light. But the seam had shrunk, as if the doors were catching their breath to close. I covered the distance in 3 long steps and put a hand to the door, and the metal was warm in a way I didn't associate with buildings. It felt like a cheek. I swallowed the sound that wanted to hurry up my throat and looked down. Footprints. They were small, bare, and wet. Not the bloom of a full step, more like someone had rested their feet here, then stood and turned toward the light. They led away from the elevator, but did not arrive anywhere. They simply faded. I called out, "Maintenance?" The way you say a word, you want to do a job you don't have a tool for. My voice went down the corridor, counted itself, and came back one shorter. I tried the radio. It offered me breathing I didn't want to own. I killed it with my thumb and pressed myself into being small. At the corridor's midpoint was a utility door without a handle. Paint the color of tea left too long. A key slot with no keyway to aim for. Just a stage prop idea of security. I listened. On the other side was water. Not running. Arranged. I thought of the penciled note. Do not stop. And understood too late that it was not a rule. It was a description. Things here didn't stop. They were paused, held between frames, like an instruction misremembered, like a command waiting for the word resume. The light at the end of the corridor lengthened again. It wasn't getting brighter. It was getting closer by learning how. I backed to the elevator gap and wedged my shoulder in, scraping the jacket my daughter hates. The doors resisted. I got a forearm in, then a knee, and the car gave me back the shape of my noise. Inside the cab, the panel flickered. 5 bled through the red segments like ink through a napkin. I hit door close with the kind of finesse you use on a light switch when you hear a glass break in a room you're not supposed to be in. The doors trembled, considered it, and met like people who had once known how. The cab didn't move. I hit 1, then L, then alarm. The alarm rang somewhere, where alarms are not supposed to ring. From the speaker grill, a voice arrived. Man's, small, centimeters deep. Tell me your location. I stood very still and felt the car consider the shape of me. My mouth had the taste of pre-rain. There's no 5, I said. It isn't what I meant to say. The words just lined up at the door and went out without me. Tell me your location. I pressed door open as if it had done anything for anyone here. The car shivered, sighed, and began to rise. Indicator marched through numbers that felt like names. 6, 7, 8. The ride up had the weight of wrong stairs. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into a hallway I knew. Carpeted, halogen, framed prints with seashells pretending to be art. But I didn't move. because I could still hear the corridor. Not behind me, not beneath me, but alongside. As if the car had learned a second way to carry a place. I took out my pen, with my hand pretending not to shake. I wrote in the log, because that's the shape I know how to make when I don't know what I'm drawing. 0042. Cab A, stalled between 4/6. Observed unknown corridor, signed 5. Voice over intercom, requested location. Return to 8. Possible crossfeed. Advise. Lockout tags on both cabs. I did not go back down. The log entry sat open on my desk, like a wound I couldn't tape shut. Every time I tried to close the binder, it creaked, like it remembered something about me I didn't want repeated. At 2:41, the building phone rang. Internal line, extension 505. There is no 505. I let it ring 6 times before picking up. Static. Then a click. Then a breath. Tell me your location. Same voice. Flat male, no depth field. Like sound stripped of its shadow. I didn't answer. He asked again. Only this time, he added a word. Tell me your current location, Marcus. Nobody in this building knew my first name that way. It came through the wire like a memory I hadn't earned yet. I hung up, unplugged the phone, still heard the dial tone in my head. When I checked the call log, the line showed floor 5 ops room. The system file had no field for that name. I went back down on Friday, not for courage, for proof. Sublevel B was still leaking paper dust and light fatigue. I passed the machine room, unlocked the panel, and watched the cabs sit still like dogs, waiting for a word. Both panels read, IDLE 04. Cab A blinked, then Cab B, then 5, alone and sincere in red. That's when the power cut. No hum, no fans, no fluorescent buzz. Just the click of a world, forgetting how to be loud. The emergency lights flickered on like they'd been asleep for decades. Something moved behind the mesh grate of Cab B. Weight shift. No footsteps, just presence. I spoke before thinking. Sarah. The voice that came back was mine, but younger by years. Don't let it close. Cab B doors shuttered half open. Inside was light that didn't illuminate. It remembered. Old office carpet, water cooler shape outlined in dust. Desk phones that believed it was still 1999. And a figure at the end, leaning over the console. She was wearing a dispatcher's headset. Mic broken, wire coiled like a throat. Every couple seconds, she tilted her head toward a speaker no longer plugged in. When I said her name again, she turned. Her eyes didn't catch light. They reflected audio. Like each word I spoke, burned its waveform inside them. You were on the radio, I said. You called me. She smiled like someone reading a line from a different page. I called because you answered. The tapes were found a week later, when maintenance finally got in. Half a dozen reels marked Camera A/test feed. They'd been recording silence for years until the day they didn't. The footage shows the corridor, light fluttering in its pattern. 2 long, 1 short, long. A figure standing mid-frame. Jacket, security badge, flashlight. He turns once to the camera. Then the tape stutters. When it resumes, he's gone. But the elevator doors are closing on something that looks like light trying to decide if it's a shadow. Later frames show the panel display. Numbers rolling backward. 8, 7, 6, then 5. Then no numbers at all. No trace of Marcus Hale was ever recovered. No activity on his badge. No records of his resignation. But the North Harbor phone directory still contains an extension 505. It rings every night at 2:41. And sometimes, if you stay on the line long enough, you can hear the elevator doors open. There are places in our buildings that do not belong to our blueprints. Spaces that exist only when you need them to teach you why you shouldn't look. The sound you hear when you think the machine has stopped is not silence. It's the building breathing in to see if you'll breathe back. I am the voice in the dark, and this is Whispers at Dark.
They're listening.
When the world sleeps, the whispers never end.